Compass Business Solutions, and I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about AV Hot Topics. And we're going to talk about the relevance of AV design considerations. I know that those of you who have spent any time in the visual communications industry have seen it change from having to do all kinds of very intensive AV integration into rooms in order to make the experience good enough for anybody to participate, to today's approach of plug and play. But the interesting thing here is we've spoken to a lot of resellers, we've spoken to a lot of end user customers, and there is still a huge market for AV integration. And there is still a huge request from the customer market for making sure that the user experience is a good experience. And AV design is very important for that. So, here we go. Why do we care about audio and visual design? Well, the end result is supposed to be to enable and improve communication. On average, people remember 10% of what they hear and 20% of what they read. But this jumps to an 80% retention rate for what they see and do. This makes visual communication the most productive communication for companies. It means nothing without acceptable audio and video quality. Users are raising the bar on user experience. They want exceptional audio and video quality. So let's take a look at that. As you look at how people get their sound into their head, sorry, that little stumble there, how do they hear? You wonder, how much does it matter what they're hearing? And does it matter? Well, of course it does. If you're not planning correctly for audio and visual design integration into your communication devices, then you end up with the old Japanese Godzilla TV show effect, where somebody's moving their lips and the delayed words are coming out, and you don't know if people really want to say something or not, so you wait a minute for the laugh or the reaction at the other end, and then you continue, but that doesn't really happen, and everybody ends up speaking over each other. And the fact of it is, the loudest person wins. So what you want to do is make sure that you create an environment for your customers that takes that into account. So there are different pieces that are important on this, and the speed of sound, of course, is one of them. Sound is going to move a lot faster, of course, through the air than through anything else. So within a room environment, when you're on the road and you're using a mobile device, or wherever you are, the things that surround you are very important to the impact of audio. And that's where it becomes very important, particularly for clients that are building conference rooms, huddle rooms, and other rooms, that there's nothing impeding that the ability to hear what's going on. And of course, through the air, there's a difference in distance. Does it matter 3 feet in front of a video system versus 7? Probably not that much. But in a larger room, it can make a difference if somebody's in the back of a training room or the back of an auditorium, and the time it takes for the audio to get into the communication device can impact the experience for the user on the far end. So there's a tolerance that we have for what we hear, and the range of hearing is important to make sure that the audio that you're receiving during the communication is loud enough for people to hear without blasting them. We want to make sure that we're not including in the communication any disrupted or unwanted sounds. And many of today's leading manufacturer devices take that into account and actually try to remove that extraneous sound from the communication. So it matters because we want to make sure that the sound that's coming through is optimal, that people can make it out clearly. And this is getting more and more important as we do more international business. If somebody's got a heavy accent on the far end, We need the clearest sound possible so we can make out what they're saying. If we're the ones with the heavy accent, they feel exactly the same way. And within the room, we need to optimize the audio quality by understanding how the sound is diffused, absorbed, or reflected. And in particularly where the sound is reflected, we end up with things like echo and reverberation that make it very hard to hear. So if we're choosing glass walls and we're choosing tile floors, we're causing the reflection to happen in the room. Audio is bouncing all over the place, and it makes it very difficult for the people receiving the communication to make out what we're saying because they're hearing audio that's not optimal. So what is optimal? Well, you want to avoid reflecting the audio, which leads to the reverberation that makes it hard to understand what was said. And it also leads, of course, to echo, which is annoying and distracting. So room designs need to lend to absorbing rather than reflecting sound. And the way that you can recommend for your customer to do that, because believe it or not, the room decor is a big part of audio-visual design, carpet instead of hardwood floors like wood or tile really makes a huge difference in the quality of the audio during communication. Painted drywall instead of hardwood or glass on the walls also is much better for audio and visual communication. Windows should have curtains or blinds. If you have a room that has a wall of glass that's a window for people to see in, might be architecturally beautiful, however, not optimal for AV. Wood tables are a little bit better. They reflect less than glass or metal tables. And making sure that speakers and microphones are placed so that they are not picking up sound from each other is important. Microphones shouldn't be turned so that a speaker is blasting directly into it. Many of the communication devices today will try to weed that out, but just turning the microphone away from the speaker is going to make a huge difference. Speakerphones and video conferencing systems that are current, certainly for many of the leading manufacturers, include echo cancellation technology that assists with addressing these issues. So while in the past these could have killed AV communication, today you have a lot of help from the systems themselves, but it's not enough. Designing the room correctly, designing the space correctly is incredibly important in order to make sure that your users end up with an optimal situation so they actually use what you've put in for them. Similar considerations need to be given to lighting the environment in order to provide the best visual experience. So, we see, in color and we're seeing light waves and red, blue, green, of course, is important. So what happens when we don't transmit the full spectrum? What happens if we set up a camera and we're not white balancing it and the colors are off? Well, all of a sudden everything starts to look a little bit wrong. Either we're showing something that looks like it's got a filter over it, or we're skewing what we're seeing at the far end and everybody looks sickly. We certainly don't want that. And then when we take into account, again, the room decor, what happens if we've got some kind of very busy wallpaper or very busy painting on the wall and somebody comes in with a very busy shirt? It can be disrupting and you can blend right in. The lighting in the room decor greatly impact the user experience, and people have recognized this by realizing that you're not going to paint your office red necessarily. You're going to paint colors that are soothing. You're going to paint colors that lead to productivity. And the same is true when you're designing these huddle spaces. We can't control what people wear, but we can recommend for room decor medium tones, preferably a little bit of a gray toned is going to work better with most cameras. Gray toned blue or gray toned green. And definitely we want wall colors that won't impact visual quality. So lighting that reflects off the monitors, if you'll look at what we're showing here, if lighting is reflecting off the monitor, that's going to keep people from being interested in what's on it because it's too hard to look at. So lighting in the room is also incredibly important in order to create a view that gives you the best view of the people in the room, as well as whatever equipment or other tools that you're using in the room. If light reflects off a whiteboard, people aren't going to look at the whiteboard. So anything that's too hard to look at simply won't be looked at. You can see that adjusting the lighting can improve or wreck what we see. Too much light washes out. So the very first picture in this slide, there's too much light, it washes out, it reflects off of a light-colored shirt, and it's not ideal. But if you do soft lighting, you might have too much shadow in the room. It makes it hard to see facial expressions, which is very much what you want to see in visual communication. So the soft lighting in the second picture with too much shadow, or backlighting, which is the third picture, it completely shadows a person. So what you want is a balanced lighting, which gives you the best image, which is the image the farthest to the right. A little bit of light behind, a little bit of light in front, making sure that it's soft and not too bright. Balancing it out, it's going to give you the best image for any space. And we've seen great improvements in the quality of video over the past 10 years. So what really happened, what really drove that, was the ability to get football in HD on a home television. It changed what we consider to be acceptable in the workplace. Everybody came back in and said, wow, I don't want to look at this standard definition television, and I don't want to look at this standard definition plasma screen anymore. I want increased video quality. I want it HD like I have at home. And that's continuing to improve. Right now we're seeing 4K video. With each increase from VGA up to the 4K we're seeing now, we get sharper images and we get smoother movement. That comes from the processing boards that are in the monitors and in the video systems. So with that, we're getting a more natural interaction. And users are coming to expect that. When I jump on a FaceTime call on my cell phone with my mother-in-law, it's a pretty decent image for something that's on something that small. When I'm looking at a big screen on the wall, it needs to be a higher quality because I'm looking at a larger image. So with that, of course, we get a cost impact for every improvement, and that does impact budgets. But would your customer actually be happy with a standard definition screen today? Absolutely not. You might be able to get one real cheap, but they're not going to be happy with it. So as you're planning for your AV input with your clients, you definitely want to speak to these things and make sure that they're aware that the more thought that they put into an environment, the better chance they're going to have for a good user experience. So now that we've talked a little bit about the audio and video basics, and by the way, going to any of the training classes, whether you're going to Infocom CTS class or getting into a deeper level class like CCNA collaboration, as you're going through these audio and video basics here, you're going to go much deeper in those classes, and it's going to talk about light saturation and sound waves and light waves, and what does that mean in the course of setting up the room. This gives you the basics to start with, but just starting with that, let's talk about whether AV needs to be integrated into the room anymore. Right now, you've got the ability to go into a room and integrate the lighting and integrate the sound and put in a video conferencing system and maybe a smart board to share some whiteboarding. And you're able to tie that all into control panels. And the question is, do you need that? And with that, you have to take into account the user experience. You can also put in a video system that controls the audio in the room without integrating it into everything else. So does your customer want something that's plug and play? Or do they want something that's fully integrated that may also adjust the lights, close the blinds, provide other room control functions for the people sitting at the table? And part of the answer to that question is, well, how complicated is it? And will the users find it too complicated to deal with? The manufacturers, the two major manufacturers, Cisco and Polycom, that make up the systems that cover about 80% of the market right now, have control panels, have their own control panels, as you can see on the table. AMX and Crestron can integrate a room further and include all of the room controls, and they can have a simple interface, or it can be much more complicated like what you're seeing here. So the answer to the question comes back to it depends. And I know that that's a tough answer, but you're going to be the professional that goes in front of your customer and says, there is a value in AV integration and design, and customers are not backing away from it with plug and play. They are still very concerned about the user experience. So let's talk about, what are you designing? If you're designing an executive office, or you're designing a conference room, or you're designing an individual huddle space or an individual office, it's the intended user experience that drives the need for AV integration. It's always been the case that the more important the user, the better the experience should be. So we have the ability now to throw a video collaboration system onto any monitor, hanging on any wall, anywhere in a building, and it'll probably get the job done without changing the environment much, if at all. But the more you impact the lighting and the decor and the audio capabilities of a space, the better chance you have of providing the best user experience. And, frankly, with, the change in the workforce and the fact that 50% of the workforce will be millennials by the year 2020, and they have a much higher expectation of audio and visual quality because they've been growing up with all of these incredible audio and visual changes in the home, you can expect that they're going to want a good experience in the office as well. So a training room may require a more integrated control panel and more integration than a group landing space would require. But the group landing space may require a better lighting setup to make sure that it's really ideal for what they're doing in that space. So it's important to take these things into consideration and try to think about, how is the space being used? In any scenario, make sure you're designing to meet your customer's expectations. Sloppy work, like exposed cabling, can lead to this look on your customer's face. So if you're going to do a plug-and-play scenario and you're going to put some audio and visual communication tools into a conference room, then it may make sense to be able to run the cabling to the table in the middle, under the floor. That's not always possible. You might not be able to core and run the cabling underneath. You may need to run the cable across the floor. If you do that, it should be neat. It should be covered so that it's not being run over by chairs and vacuum cleaners and people tripping on it trying to walk around the room. It should definitely have some type of covering over it. So it's important to remember that no matter what you're doing, your customer expects at the end that it's going to be pretty, that it's going to be an environment that somebody walks into and doesn't feel like, oh, nobody cares about this room. So that's going to be very important as well. We have a bunch of different places where you can get information about AV integration. Of course, absolutely go to the Field Nation website. Look at the compassprogram.com blog, and if you have questions about AV integration, post them there, and the instructors will actually respond to you directly. You can look at the borderless learning programs that are available to you. Everybody who's on this call today will get a login to the borderless learning management system, and you'll get access to the electronic courses that you're getting for participating today. And there's other information that's available there. And again, you can post information to instructors to respond to you. One of the places you might want to check out, and it's a very good website, is called Project Workplace. So it's projectworkplace.cisco.com. That site gives you the ability to look at different types of rooms and see how audio and visual components would be integrated into the room. Gives you some blueprint drawings with the ability to take a look at, okay, what are we saying would be ideal? And then your customers can, from that point, decide how deep do they want to go. From a boardroom to an executive office to a huddle room to a training room to a normal conference room, you can see the products in action there. Now, again, that site is a Cisco site, so you're going to see all Cisco products. You can look at other places on the web to see other manufacturers and their products as well. And for everybody who's on this call today, I would strongly recommend that you go to imcca.org. That's imcca.org. You can join as an end user customer for free and be a part of that community, which has been involved in interactive multimedia communications for many years. Carol Zelkin, who runs that organization, is very well connected within the AV industry. You will find other people that you can communicate with from an end user perspective, from a contractor perspective, within that organization, and really share some great ideas about things that have worked and ways to approach this. And what we're going to do now is talk about, go take a look at the questions that have come in. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and post them in the Q&A section of the GoToMeeting window. And while we're waiting for the questions to get organized by our other hosts, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the training offerings that are available to you. Borderless learning programs are available to you in order to balance the need for live training, but with the benefits and convenience of eliminating travel and making information available on demand. So Compass has been working with Field Nation to create some training programs that are going to provide the most benefit to this community. We're very happy to offer you borderless learning programs. These programs give you unlimited access to any classes within a program that are offered live. So you can attend as many times as you want. They're 3-hour sessions twice a week for 3 weeks, which means you don't have to not take work during that time. You can just, for a full week, you can spread out the class and then attend it in those sessions. You get, with this, access to remote labs, which you do on demand. You get 24/7 access to electronic training materials, get access to practice exams, but here's the huge benefit. While you're doing this, it's an annual subscription, you get access to mentors. So if you're doing something, learning on your own, either through the electronic training or through the labs that you're doing at your own pace, and you have a question, you can open a chat window and work with a subject matter expert who can help you. So we designed these programs specifically for this community, this Field Nation community. And it's in order to help you limit your time out of the field or the office and maximize your access to live subject matter experts. So you can purchase individual classes or any of these bundles that I'm going to show you here and reduce your training costs significantly while still offering you more than you would get in a traditional training class. And it gives you the opportunity to keep your knowledge current because you can attend a class again later in the year if something changes. Product gets updated, there's new software out, there's new technology standards, whatever may apply. So the classes that belong in the Borderless Learning Program are grouped by networks, which is all the route and switch, security, design, data center classes, or servers, which is the Windows Server, SharePoint, Exchange, and those types of classes. There's a virtualization grouping for VMware, vCloud, Cisco Virtualization, and Network Plus. And then there's project management and leadership, which focuses on PMP, project management classes, and business leadership classes. The one that applies to the topic that we had today is collaboration. You can choose a CCNA collaboration grouping or a CCNP collaboration grouping if you already have some of the lower level experience, or you can bundle the two together. So you've got the ability to pick and choose a different skill set that works for you, and if you need everything, you can of course do it group them together. If you prefer just learning on your own and you don't really want to participate in live classes and you don't really need access to the labs, then there are borderless learning on-demand programs. And those programs, you get the electronic course kits, you still get the mentoring. So if you're going through an electronic course and you're not really sure about something and you need it clarified, you can open a chat box, speak to a mentor. If something changes later in a year and information gets updated, you can get on, you can open a chat and ask a mentor, hey, explain the difference to me, what's happened now? So there are many different ones here. Cloud and virtualization, cybersecurity are big ones, networking, database, and big data. For those of you that are interested in collaboration, I really strongly suggest that you look at networking. Everything that hits the IP network is very important for collaboration today. So thanks for participating today. And Donna, I'm going to ask you to jump in now and help us with some of the questions that have come in.